You know the woman who stood on the Golden Globe stage in 2018 and said the words that shook the entire industry? Well, two of Hollywood's most controversial figures just started connecting dots that suggest she might have been talking about literally everyone except herself. Because here's what nobody's connecting yet.
And they're some of the richest, most powerful people in this business.
And they are.
And they do not want me saying what I'm saying right now.
Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman just started naming names. And one name kept appearing in those Epstein files over and over again. But we'll get to that. In January 2018, the entire world watched one moment that was supposed to change everything. A woman stood on a stage at the Golden Globes and made a declaration that felt revolutionary. She said their time is up talking about the powerful men who had silenced women for decades. The room erupted. 3 standing ovations. Within hours, millions of people called for her to run for president. Hollywood wore black. The message was clear. The reckoning had arrived. But 5 months later, something deeply uncomfortable started to emerge. Because while everyone was celebrating this speech about accountability and believing women, the same institution that applauded it was quietly wrestling with a very different problem. And that problem had a name: Morgan Freeman. Now here's where it gets interesting. Both Oprah and Morgan Freeman had received the exact same award from the exact same institution. The Cecil B. DeMille Award, the highest honor Hollywood can give. Both were icons. Both were untouchable. Both were considered the good ones. But in 2018, in the span of just 5 months, both became central figures in a story about what happens when the system tries to hold itself accountable. And what we've discovered since then is that the accountability might have stopped in all the wrong places. Because while Morgan Freeman's allegations dominated the news cycle, while his reputation took a hit, while people debated the severity of his conduct, there were other names in those Epstein files, names that still haven't been properly interrogated. And Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman just decided to connect those dots publicly. They're saying the women silencing happened at the highest levels, not from beneath, from above.
Are you saying that they're pedophiles?
Yes.
And that they're still in this business?
That was 1993, 31 years ago. Gibson was naming names to police, and those names have never been fully exposed to the public until now. To understand why Oprah's name keeps appearing in connection with all of this, you have to understand how Hollywood actually works, not how it pretends to work, how it actually works. Hollywood power isn't built on merit, it's built on relationships. Friendships, loyalty, shared history, mutual benefit. The same relationships that can make your career are the exact same relationships that create the silence that allows misconduct to persist. Think about it. When someone's accused of something, do you distance yourself from them? Or do you ask yourself what it might cost you to do so? That's not a rhetorical question. That's what everyone in Hollywood is actually asking themselves. In 2018, when Morgan Freeman's allegations came out, the industry had a clean narrative to work with. Morgan Freeman was beloved, but his behavior was eventually documented and reported. The story could be contained. A Lifetime Achievement Award could be placed under review. A reckoning could occur. But what happens when the person at the center of the reckoning is someone who created the platform for that reckoning? What happens when the person saying "believe women" is the same person who might need women to stay silent?
I told the police. In fact, if anybody wants to go back to 1993 when I was interviewed by the Santa Barbara Police Department, I sat there and I gave them the names. They're on record.
Powerful statement. Genuinely powerful. But Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman are now asking, did that apply to all women or only the ones whose stories didn't threaten her directly? Now, when you place that alongside everything Mel Gibson has been saying about Hollywood being a hunting ground about powerful people using their charitable platforms to gain access to vulnerable populations, the optics start changing. Now, Gibson's making extreme extreme claims there. But underlying his statement is a real pattern: vulnerable people. Access, power, charity as a cover for predation. And here's what Mel and Morgan have started pointing out: Oprah's Africa School gave her unprecedented access to vulnerable girls from impoverished backgrounds, girls who needed her approval, girls who had everything to lose if they spoke up. It's the same power dynamic that protected Harvey Weinstein for decades. It's the same infrastructure that allowed Epstein to operate, control the narrative, control the victims, make it impossible for them to be believed. The school was supposed to transform lives, but what if it transformed something else entirely? What if it became another tool in the same machine Oprah claimed to be dismantling? That's the question Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman are now asking out loud. 3 million files. That's what the Department of Justice released from the Epstein investigation. 3 million files, including thousands of videos and images of the elites doing things to women and girls that we're not allowed to fully describe on YouTube. But what's been interesting about these files is what hasn't been prominently reported. Not just the names of the men involved, but the names of the women who facilitated access, the women who recruited, the women who normalized the behavior.
And when a mind-controlled slave such as myself was stripped of clothes and turned loose in the woods, I was then hunted by George Bush, Dick Cheney, and Bill Clinton.
And in one of the emails Epstein sent to his people, he said, and this is a direct quote, "They are like shrimp. You throw away the top, keep the body." The dehumanization was complete. These weren't people to him. Now, here's what Mel Gibson has been saying consistently, and this is where his claims about a network start to make sense. There's a system, not just individual predators, a system. People who facilitate, people who protect, people who normalize the behavior until girls in undies being chased by grown men doesn't even register as unusual. In Hollywood, who would have access to girls like that? Who would have the platform to recruit them? Who would have the institutional power to make them feel like they had no choice but to participate? That's the question. And when you layer in Oprah's Africa School, her celebrity status, her ability to attract vulnerable girls, her platform to make them feel indebted to her, suddenly the question becomes less theoretical. The richest, most powerful people, not the low-level producers, not the studio executives hiding in shadows, the most powerful people, the ones with the platforms, the ones with the legitimate access, the ones we think we know. Now, here's why Morgan Freeman's allegations in 2018 become so significant to this narrative. Freeman was at the top of the Hollywood hierarchy. He wasn't just an actor, he was the moral voice of the industry. He played God. He narrated humanity's greatest achievements. He was the voice of authority, of conscience, of trustworthiness. And then, in May 2018, CNN published an investigation showing that Freeman had engaged in a pattern of behavior that demeaned, and made women on his sets profoundly uncomfortable.
And they're some of the richest, most powerful people in this business.
And they are.
And they do not want me saying what I'm saying right now.
16 people came forward. 16, not just one accusation. A documented pattern across multiple sets, multiple years. But here's what's interesting about Morgan Freeman's response. He didn't deny it. He reframed it.
Right when I walked into the room, he began making slightly suggestive comments to me.
Notice the language. Anyone who felt uncomfortable. Not I made them uncomfortable. Not I did this. He apologized for their feelings, not for his actions. That's the infrastructure of silence right there. That's how it works. You acknowledge the discomfort exists, but you don't accept responsibility for it. You make it about perception rather than conduct. And what Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman are now suggesting together is that Freeman might have been complicit in a much larger system, not just with his own behavior on sets, but with what he knew and didn't say. Because here's the thing, Morgan Freeman was beloved. He had access everywhere. He knew everyone. If there was a culture of exploitation happening at the highest levels, Freeman would have known. He would have heard things. He would have seen things. The question is, what did he do with that information? Oprah said that about the power of speaking truth. While Morgan Freeman, whose truth-telling might have been profoundly powerful, instead normalized discomfort and reframed responsibility. And that system had protectors. People People at the highest level of entertainment who knew and stayed silent, who benefited from the silence, who, in some cases, actively perpetuated it. That's not Gibson being poetic. That's him describing what he genuinely believes is a culture of systemic exploitation. And what Mel and Morgan are now asking is, who in that system had the power to stop it and didn't? Who had the platform to expose it and stayed silent? Who benefited from the vulnerability of others? The names in the Epstein files are being slowly released. Harvey Weinstein's crimes are being prosecuted. Diddy's facing serious charges. But the infrastructure, the network of enablers, protectors, facilitators, is still mostly intact because the infrastructure includes people like Oprah, people with charity platforms, people with networks, people with the ability to access vulnerable populations and the power to make sure they stay silent. Let's talk about something that's been largely ignored in the mainstream reporting: missing girls. In the Epstein files, there are references to girls who disappeared, girls who were trapped and never found, girls whose families spent years not knowing what happened to them. Now, here's the thing about the Africa School. It gave Oprah access to girls from impoverished backgrounds, girls without resources, girls whose families were often unconnected to powerful institutions, girls who, if they disappeared, wouldn't necessarily be reported to the right authorities, girls who wouldn't be missed in the way American children would be missed.
Find out later on the track that you are exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. Not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real.
That's what Gibson said. His worst nightmares were real, not speculation, not paranoia. Reality and the Africa School connection raises uncomfortable questions. What happened to girls who attended Oprah's school? Where did they go after? Were they connected to anyone in the network? Did any of them disappear? The official story is that the school closed some operations, that students graduated, that the program moved forward with reforms. But Mel Gibson's entire argument is that the official story is a lie, that there are layers beneath what we're being told, that investigations have been suppressed, that evidence has been hidden. And if you look at the pattern, Epstein had facilities. Harvey Weinstein had hotels and offices. Diddy had parties and studios. What did Oprah have? A school in Africa, a platform in America, access to vulnerable girls in both places.
That's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like. Could it?
Gibson's pointing out the gaslighting, the way people dismiss allegations because they seem too big, too complicated, too impossible to be true. Why? Because the narrative around her is too clean. She's a Black woman who overcame poverty and became a billionaire. She's a philanthropist. She's a voice for women. To challenge that narrative would be to challenge the entire story of American success we tell ourselves. That speech was powerful, genuinely, but what if it was also a shield? What if, by positioning herself as the voice of women who'd been silenced, she made herself untouchable? Think about it. If you tried to challenge Oprah's narrative, what would happen? You'd be attacking the most successful Black woman in television history. You'd be victim blaming. You'd be racist. The institutional response would be immediate and devastating. So the silence around Oprah wasn't enforced through threats or blackmail. It was enforced through social protection, through the understanding that to challenge her was to challenge every progress narrative around her identity. That's a more sophisticated silence than Epstein or Weinstein created. That's structural silence, institutional silence. And Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman are now pointing that out.
And then you find out later on the track that you are exactly on track with a lot of this.
That's what they're saying. They found evidence. They made connections. They put the pieces together. And what they found was that the entire system was more interconnected than anyone realized. Here's the hardest question to sit with, and I want you to really think about this. Why did some people face serious consequences for their behavior while others didn't? Morgan Freeman, his behavior, while harmful, was documented as disrespect and sexualization. He faced professional consequences. Harvey Weinstein, his behavior included rape allegations. He's in prison. Diddy facing facing serious trafficking charges. But Oprah? She's had allegations connected to her through her institution, the school abuse scandal, and she faced almost nothing publicly. Her reputation is protected. Her platform is intact. Her influence is undiminished. Why the difference? That question was asked by the second transcript's narrator, but let me ask it to you directly. Do we believe women when their abuser is someone we love? Do we apply the same standard? The answer, based on what happened to Oprah, seems to be no. She said their time is up, but whose time? Everyone's time? Or just the men who were already disliked? The men who didn't have the cultural cachet to survive exposure? People thought it was just a movie about trafficking, but Mel and Morgan are now saying it was something else. It was a direct response to what they were uncovering about the system. That's not just a plot, that's a template. That's how the system works. Beautiful women posing as talent scouts, vulnerable kids, fake opportunities that lead to exploitation. And where does that happen? In charity organizations, in philanthropic programs, in platforms that position themselves as helping vulnerable populations, like say Oprah's Africa School. Mel Gibson made a movie exposing the exact infrastructure that was protecting people like Oprah. The fake opportunities, the targeted vulnerability, the recruitment of girls from impoverished backgrounds. And the movie was a massive success, which means the message got through. People understood. They got it. So what did the industry do? They let the movie exist. They didn't suppress it, but they made sure that the conversation around it stayed theoretical. They let it be about trafficking over there while ignoring the trafficking happening over here. See how that works? Mel Gibson's controversial past made him an unreliable narrator. So even when he was telling the truth, people dismissed him. They said he was a conspiracy theorist. A paranoid has been trying to stay relevant. And fifth, and this is the key one, you'd need institutions like the Africa School to manage any evidence that emerged internally, to handle allegations quietly, to settle lawsuits with NDAs, to make sure nothing reached the public in a way that would raise real questions. That's exactly what happened.
I'm saying that there are people that were the people that did this to both me and Corey that are still working, they're still out there, and they're some of the richest, most powerful people in this business.
Still working, still out there. That's the key line. These people didn't face consequences. They faced management. Their exposure was managed, their reputations were protected. And now, Morgan Freeman and Mel Gibson are trying to break that silence. But here's the challenge they face. Oprah has spent decades building something that Epstein, Weinstein, and Diddy never had cultural protection. She's beloved, she's inspiring, she's untouchable, because everyone benefits from believing in her. To challenge her is to challenge the entire story of American meritocracy and redemption that we all want to believe in. So where does this leave us? We have two Hollywood figures, Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman, coming together to suggest that the reckoning in 2018 was incomplete, that the most powerful voices for accountability might themselves need to be held accountable. We have a documented pattern. Epstein, Weinstein, Diddy, names and files, evidence of trafficking, evidence of networks. We have Oprah's Africa School with documented abuse allegations that were internally managed. We have the missing girls who disappeared from systems designed to help them. We have Mel Gibson's consistent claims since 1993 that there was a system, and he'd named names to police. We have Morgan Freeman's harassment allegations showing that moral authority can be performative. And we have that speech. Their time is up. All the pieces are there. The question is whether we're willing to see the full picture. That speech created a moment where the industry seemed ready to hold itself accountable. But accountability only works if it applies to everyone, if it applies to the beloved just as much as it applies to the despised. The question Mel and Morgan are now asking is, did it? Or did Oprah's speech become the shield that protected her from the very accountability she was calling for? Look, I can lay out the connections, I can show you the timeline, I can point you to the films, the interviews, the allegations, the missing pieces of the puzzle. But this story only matters if you care about it, if you think it deserves investigation, if you believe that accountability should apply equally. Mel Gibson and Morgan Freeman are putting themselves in an extremely vulnerable position by making these claims. They're risking everything by challenging a narrative that the entire industry is invested in protecting. So the question is, are you willing to listen? Are you willing to question the narrative you've been given? Are you willing to demand accountability even from people you've been told to admire? That's what this is really about. Like this video, share it, comment below with your thoughts. Tell me whether you think Gibson and Freeman are onto something or whether you think this is a distraction from real accountability. And if you want to go deeper on the Epstein files, on Harvey Weinstein, on the infrastructure of exploitation in Hollywood, click here. Because the story isn't over, the reckoning isn't finished, and the truth is still trying to surface.